Okay, so welcome everyone to Lifeway's Internet Safety and Human Trafficking Simulation in honor of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. We are ecstatic to come together to use this time to deepen our knowledge of the topic at hand. So as we go about our busy lives, it's important to remember that predators and exploiters flock to places where they can make connections with potential victims, and that includes the digital environment. Creating and sharing child sexual abuse material, grooming and gaining trust, posting ads for jobs that seem like a dream uh, can otherwise turn out to be something that is anything but. So there's a lot of ways in which, unfortunately, the digital environment can be misused. The internet can be used powerfully in a positive way as well. So at Lifeway, for instance, we host educational lunch and learns, such as you're witnessing right now. We organize digital and social media and advocacy activations and convene task forces online. At the Safe Houses, we provide computer literacy support to help equip survivors to use the digital space to reach their goals. And Lifeway has also been a longtime supporter of the Earn It Act, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So this simulation will be a quick, easy exercise and also fun. So I hope we have a lot of enjoyment throughout this as well. It will take us through 3 everyday and real life examples. We encourage you to either have a pen or paper or use a notepad on your computer, whatever might be helpful to you to help reflect on the questions that we have today. We encourage you to share your results in the chat when the time does come. The questions will help you to identify what you're witnessing and seeing and how you might want to approach a potentially risky situation in this safe environment. While you might not be a child or an educator or a parent yourself, you might find that you're in a situation one day in the future where someone does come to you directly and shares with you a murky situation, and you could be that person that is able to offer them some support or insight. So one reminder is that if we do cut off for any reason, speaking about the downsides to the digital environment, just sit back, hang in there. We will reconnect and continue with our regularly scheduled programming. To introduce myself, just so you know who I am, I'm Tori Crivello, the Director of Education, Training, and Advocacy at Lifeway Network. My career has focused on combating exploitation and similar human rights abuses. I carry experience from UNICEF USA, Fair Trade USA, International Rescue Committee, and WIN. And this is my passion. I enjoy connecting with individuals just like yourselves around the urgency of human trafficking and engaging with audiences everywhere. I've done briefings at the United Nations, Times Square, even if you could even believe that. And in 2015, I launched a child trafficking podcast with UNICEF USA called Ending Human Trafficking Locally and Globally. I hold a master's from the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health, and I'm pursuing a second master's at Columbia University in Human Rights Policy. Before I move on, I would like our second panelist to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolina, and I've been interning for Lifeway in their advocacy department for about 2 years now, and I'm going to be a senior in high school next year. And a lot of my work with Lifeway has been focused on terms of fair trade, as well as advocacy and education work, whether that be writing for Lifeway for their blog or conducting research in terms of fair trade and how to best employ a fair trade resolution in Manhattan and those sorts of concepts. And it's been really great to be able to work with Lifeway and join in their mission.
Absolutely. And you've probably seen Carolina's work. One of the pieces she helped with was a student activity guide, which is pretty helpful for educators, administrators, and students for taking action right in their own communities. So she was pretty instrumental in giving her insight on developing that key resource. So to talk a little bit about Lifeway, I know that many of you are friends of Lifeway, but for anyone who is new and not as familiar, for background, we are the only provider in the New York City area to offer long-term safe housing for women survivors of all forms of human trafficking, including labor, sex, and organ trafficking to both domestic and foreign-born survivors. So whether that survivor has experienced trafficking previously or in the past, we understand that a healing process can take time. And so at Lifeway, she can take that time to heal and plan her next steps and her goals towards independence. We also run an education program which equips communities with ways of taking action, and you're actually seeing it live right now, a component of the education program.
So today in this presentation, we are going to explore three common internet scenarios and really dive into them and how their dangers in order to understand two things. First, in order to understand common red flags of online abuse, specifically in terms of exploitation occurring online. And second, together, so we can discover the tools and resources we need to help us navigate the digital space, especially now in the 21st century when so much of our lives all are centered around technology and the digital space. So first, we're going to look at a few statistics. So here is a statistic from UNICEF about how children around the world are out of school and relying on digital solutions. Second, another statistic is that according to Polaris Project, online recruitment has increased a significant 22%, especially now in terms of lockdowns with COVID-19. The proportions of victims from common recruitment sites went down drastically, and the internet was reported as the new top recruitment location for all forms of trafficking. And also another statistic from Polaris, 26% of participants stated their trafficker exploited them via their own personal social media accounts. So just how rampant the problems of the internet are in terms of trafficking, and how the trafficking and technology can be so interconnected. And also, according to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, they found that children under 12 years old were depicted in 78% of the images and videos assessed by their team, and 63% of those children were under the age of 8, which is just another staggering statistic. And now we're going to go into those three scenarios that we talked about in order really to learn about the interconnectedness of trafficking and technology.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight that one statistic that you talked about, the 26% of traffickers who use their own profiles. I find that one to be completely staggering, that over a quarter of traffickers are emboldened and feel safe, not even to create a fake profile, not to hide behind something. They feel perfectly fine using their own accounts, their own names, not hiding anything. And I think that should be alarming to us as well, is that these predators aren't only on the black web, but very much in virtual spaces that are out there in the open for the public. So yes, so we can move on to the scenarios. So I'll show you in a second a stilled image of this, so don't feel like you have to catch all the wording on this. But the first scenario is this chat that we see on the screen. We all use messaging, sometimes texting, sometimes we use platforms like Instagram to communicate. Some of us use WhatsApp. There's also an app called Kik that claims that a third of American teenagers use their platform for communicating. So we use a ton of different systems out there for doing so. So we can go to the next slide that shows a stilled image of this conversation, and I can actually read it out loud for anyone who might have trouble reading the screen. So, hi, are you okay? The person says, no, I'm feeling kind of down actually. He replies, you didn't like Greg and the boys? I just, and she writes, I just didn't feel comfortable. You told me this would be a modeling gig. I didn't think this would involve any sexual activity. And he writes back, don't be so naive. It takes time to reach that level. Trust me, you'll get used to it. So take a minute to think about what might be some red flags. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is because in any situation that you're faced with that's of concerning to you, or of concern to you rather, you want to make a decision. So the decision could either be to do nothing, or you might want to do something about it. And sometimes being able to pinpoint what you're concerned about, what some of the red flags are, can be helpful in making a decision on whether or not to take action about something you've witnessed or heard about. So I think it's really important to be able to articulate what are the concerns in this situation. So take about a minute to read through the chat, think about what you heard, and you could either share some red flags in the chat or you can just think about it privately for yourselves. I think this is a helpful exercise for any kind of situation you might come across. And I'll share some of mine in a minute as well. Okay, I see a few in the chat. I'll give it maybe a few more seconds. Absolutely. So first one that I see on the screen is red flags. She was misled and reveals that the encounter was sexual. Absolutely. The sexual nature of it, you definitely want to note, especially for underage folks. She was promised a modeling job, but involved sex. Absolutely. The fraud, the deception involved. When Tim says, trust me, you'll get there. Showing concern, such as, are you okay? And then making the victim feel bad about how they felt. Don't be so naive. Yeah, that's not one I had, but I think that's a really interesting point and a good one. Kind of the flipping when it's necessary, the using the kind of gaslighting when it's necessary, and then at someone's disposal, they can use that kind of care. So the very careful choice in how they respond. Absolutely. They're leveraging the modeling job for sexual favors. Absolutely. So I think we hit it right on the head. Those were some of the ones I had as well. Misrepresenting an opportunity. That's absolutely a tactic relied upon by a number of traffickers. And it's also illegal to misrepresent a job opportunity. And it seems in this scenario, he originally presented it to be a modeling opportunity. And then when she got there, that wasn't the case. The second is the gaslighting. So it is reasonable to expect that a person wouldn't be okay once that they've learned that they've been deceived. But the character in this scenario tries to normalize what's happening by asking absurd questions such as, hey, are you okay? Of course she wouldn't be okay, but almost trying to pretend that he fell out of Mars and has no idea what's going on. And then as was noted, using sexualized activity or mentioning it rather, and the language around that, especially for underage children, but specifically here because there was a job mentioned, that's an implied either prior or future exchange of money. So anytime a child under the age of 18 is involved in commercial sex or trying to be recruited for commercial sex, that should automatically be red flag to us all the time. Perfect. So I think we can go on to the second one. Okay, so sometimes we're all in search of a job at one point or another, unless you're lucky and maybe have disposable income without a job, then kudos to you. So where do we go when we do need a job? Well, the first place is usually online, since we're no longer usually relying on flyers that are hung up on bus stations or going to our newspaper. And these are the same places that fraudulent opportunities or exploitative opportunities are also posted as well. So we'll take a look at this ad. I'll read it out. It says, tired of working a minimum wage dead end job? Want to get out and see the country while getting paid cash every day and having fun? We pay for lodging and food. Hit me up for details. What are you waiting for? So are there any red flags here with this ad? Maybe take a minute to think about what some red flags might be about this job post. And you can feel free also to read the comments. I found them to be quite interesting. And this is a real job post. This was from a Polaris project report. They did change the names to hide the identities, but there's a real conversation. We can maybe take 30 seconds more. Okay. Yeah, sounds too good to be true. That's, I think, the number one thing that would raise an eyebrow for me is I think there's a difference between landing your dream job, which, for instance, this is a great job for me. I love what I do. I love directing the education program, but that's different than finding an unrealistic job post. I think those are two different things. And at least if something seems to be too good to be true, it doesn't mean turn it down, but does mean to be cautious around what that means. So absolutely. Uh, the second thing that I see in the chat is there's no actual job description. It's very vague. Yeah, that too. That's probably the second most important or equally important is that all the relevant information from here is redacted. I would want to know, what are you hiring for? Are you wanting me to join the circus? Or am I traveling because I'm going on a worldwide tour to sing? Like, what's going on here? Um, so absolutely, that should be a red flag. Let's see, what else? Agreed, too good to be true, someone said. Stating benefits of the job that are simply unrealistic for most employment opportunities. Yeah, it almost seems like, why is this person being so altruistic? They're offering to pay for traveling costs, paying for lodging and food. You're getting paid in cash, paid above minimum wage. It's like, why is it my lucky day here? Like, why are you offering all of this stuff to me? Absolutely. Um, yeah. And who is Ashley P? Who is she working for? Why don't we know a company? Sure, there are jobs in the informal sector like walking dogs or babysitting, but it's always nice if it can be tied to a legitimate company or you know who the employer is. That also shouldn't be redacted from a job post. Um, Perfect. Yeah, I think that quite sums it up for me too. I think we hit everything that I came up with. Cool. So the last, oh, and one thing I did want to note about this is that, sorry, Carolina, I know that I said next, but we can actually go back to the original. So as I mentioned before, it's not clear what this job is for, but we suspect it's probably for a traveling sales crew, which is one of the top labor trafficking industries for domestic youth in the United States. So traveling sales crews are groups of individuals that go door to door or travel around and they sell magazines, trinkets, subscriptions. It kind of varies in terms of what they're selling. But there are a lot of trafficking cases found in these settings. So that's important to note. And most likely what this Ashley individual was recruiting for. Okay, and then the last scenario that I wanted to cover is another conversation. And this takes place on Discord, which if you don't know what Discord is, it's another popular communication platform that I can talk about in a second. But I'll read it. It's a little hard to read. And I've used Discord before, but I kind of forgot how it works. But essentially, this is kind of a one-way conversation that you're seeing here. It's 3 panels to cover the entire scope of the conversation. So the person says, I swear to God, your mother will see the screenshots and video if you yell, anyone else about this, Reagan. You blank blank. Reagan, Reagan, be a smart girl and unblock me. I do this to so many girls. You were right. Then there's a missed call. Then, Reagan, don't ignore me. I know where you live. I'm going to give you your IP away to a booter. Respond to my DMs. Reagan, now. So that's actually also a real screenshot. And this is taken by Nkosi in a 2022 report that they cite as evidence for trying to get greater protection on this Discord app. So instead of asking, I think our red flag should be through the roof right now. I think it's clear that there's so many red flags in here, but I want to ask a different question. And the question is, how might you actually approach this scenario? Now, this might not be a conversation that's happening to you, but perhaps you hear about it or you come across your cousin's phone or someone shares it with you that they're scared. Like, what might you advise that they do? What might be appropriate in this situation? We can take a minute to think about that. And while you think about that, someone wrote, this has been going on for many years. It's horrible. Yeah. And I think the scary thing is that it will go on for many more years if we don't continue to pressure technology companies to take action. So that's a big topic for the webinar in a second. Maybe 30 more seconds. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the suggestions that we have in the chat. Let me scroll up a bit. Show the police the text, report the user through Discord service, and yes, screenshot and collect evidence for the police. This is harassment. Tell parents, call police. This needs immediate interdiction. I would want first to know what the exposure is. What did Reagan provide to the bad actor? Then I would have her delete the profile, change usernames and passwords, and file a police report. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing those. First and foremost, we're not going to offer, there's no, let's say, right response. Every situation is a little bit different. And we're going to offer a suggestion. But of course, it's really up to you and what you feel most best and comfortable. I completely understand why some of you would want to go to the police. I would warn that keep in mind that not every professional is trained in every aspect of social services, so they might not be helpful. And a large part of that is because of social norms in our society, like who we deem to be victims. So someone can look at this and be like, wow, this is Reagan's fault. Why did she share something explicit? Like she deserved whatever is happening to her. So that happens a lot with professionals that that we seek to help support us, not only with the police, but really with a lot of actors in our communities. So sometimes we have to be advocates for ourselves and others and understand what we're witnessing is wrong. So that's a caveat and something I think a lot of us have experienced when we've tried to reach out for help. So just to keep in mind, and I think that's also why it's important to note some of these things so you can come with evidence. I think that was documented in the chat as well. Collect whatever information you can find. Sometimes the most information you can give helps out a scenario in the best way possible. What else? Yeah, I would definitely, I don't know if I would go to the parents right away. They probably should know at one point. I would personally try to build trust with whoever it is, depending on my relationship with them. I wouldn't want to put them in a situation where they're not going to be helpful to uh, getting this person in trouble. And it's already really, really hard to put these, to hold these perpetrators accountable. So I would try to build rapport first, but of course, it really depends on the scenario. I can't highlight that enough. Um, Perfect. So we can go to the next slide for my suggestion. I find this to be pretty helpful. It's the cyber tip hotline is what it's called. I know there's a lot of hotlines out there, but it's a pretty important one to note. Um, they also have a forum as well, which is what you're seeing on the screen. It's run by the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You can report issues of child pornography, online enticement of children for sexual acts, child sex trafficking, child sexual molestation, child sex tourism, misleading domain names, um, and digital images on the internet, as well as unsolicited obscene materials sent to a child. So a whole slew of different crimes they cover, and they are trained professionals specifically in this field. So they do work with law enforcement and other professionals, but they carry that lens to understand victimology and understand trauma and all these important lenses that we should carry when we're trying to support those who have had something like this inflicted upon them. So I would definitely write that down. I can write it in the chat just so you're familiar. Cyber tip hotline. Perfect. So we can go to the next one. A couple more red flags that we wanted to highlight and to keep in mind. So if we go to the next slide, this screen specifically covers red flags that you would see from a suspected trafficker or exploiter or abuser. So have they made false promises, such as offering to pay for housing and that falls through? That would be an example of a false promise. Have they lied or are they lying about a job opportunity, such as we saw in the chat about the modeling gig? Is there use of sexualized language or suggestion of sexual activity? Has someone requested access to any passwords or any personal information, such as like where a user lives, social security? That would be sensitive personal information. And lastly, are they threatening to release a photo or information as blackmail? This is sort of what we saw, not sort of, absolutely saw on the Discord chat. The next slide shows red flags that we would see in a potential child who may be actively exploited or abused. So perhaps they're chronically running away from home or have unexcused absences in schools. All of a sudden, they may have the means to secure jewelry or other expensive items that they didn't have the means to buy before. They may have suspicious tattoos or branding. They might quickly switch screens when they're approached. They exhibit an increased obsession with spending time online and are withdrawing from family and friends, since exploiters do try to isolate potential victims, or they can develop trauma. They just might feel down, or if they're involved with commercial sex, that might be time consuming for them. So there's might be different reasons why you might see withdrawing. Of course, by highlighting these red flags, we don't mean to say that seeing one of these red flags means that there's a case of child sexual abuse or something similar. But if you see a couple of these might be indicators that you might want to take action. So absolutely try to remember some of those and revisit periodically just to remind yourself. Okay, here's some helpful suggestions from the United Nations, which is worth going over and something that you might want to share if you are in the presence of youth, if you have younger siblings, if you have children, if you're an educator. Definitely share these and promote these. So the first one is setting strict privacy settings. So one anecdote that I wanted to share is that recently I actually had a business meeting with a union member. And when we sat down at the table, he started revealing things about my life. He started saying, "Oh, so you got inspiration to do your current career from your family. Oh, and you have three siblings and you have a cat." And I was like, "Oh," like he didn't say it exactly like that. He was much smoother. And I had asked him like, "Oh, how did you know about that?" And he was like, "I met you before." And for a second, I thought he was serious. But then when I thought about it, I was like, "Oh, of course, you Googled me." And he was like, "Yeah, we Google every single person that comes to our doors. We have to double check everyone." So even as an adult, and I'm perfectly fine with the information out there, I do my work publicly, but that just goes to show you how much is really out there, even if you're not someone that's public speaking regularly. But exploiters can learn so much. As the saying goes, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So some pictures that are public, they can really tell where you like to hang out, where what kind of things you value, what you like to do, who you value. So they can use that against you. They can threaten your sister, your best friend, your significant other. So just highlighting that, especially at a younger age, privacy settings are critical. Being aware of strange friend requests, encouraging youth to only accept requests from people that they know. As we mentioned before, that 26% statistic of traffickers that use their own profiles. So it really can be anyone, even if they seem quote unquote normal and have more than 2 followers. And don't overshare. So of course, information can be used for blackmail or for other ill intent. The fourth one is be aware of advertisements that seem too good to be true, which we saw in the Facebook ad. This was highlighted before in the chat. Flag it, don't share it. That's a very important one, especially with sensitive images of sexual abuse, for instance. So sometimes people are tempted to share it with colleagues or friends, not in necessarily a malicious way, but just like, "Oh my goodness, look what I just saw." But that actually perpetuates the harm by recirculating it. So instead of sharing it with someone you know, try to share it with a professional so that they can actually do something about it, and it avoids recirculating. Know the warning signs of trafficking. So generally, we encourage everyone in the community to continue their journey of understanding human trafficking. We try to keep the community abreast with different sources of information, content, and intersectional issues with webinars like this one today, through blogs and social media. So absolutely, if you're not subscribed to our content, please do subscribe. We spend a lot of time brainstorming and thinking of relevant topics that can help us as a community be better equipped to fight trafficking. And lastly, if you don't have the human trafficking hotline on your phone, absolutely put it into your phone. Google human trafficking hotline, put it into your phone, just like you know 911. You should be familiar with the human trafficking hotline. Two more things that I wanted to quickly, or three more, but they'll be quick and important. So let's talk about the Dirty Dozen list. You might recognize some of these logos. And you yourself, and even myself, we might purchase from some of these companies. We might utilize their services and functions. But the reason that they're on this list is because they're put there by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, an organization that's also referred to as NCOSI. They have come up with this list to flag it to us. So the Dirty Dozen list is an annual campaign calling out 12 mainstream entities for facilitating, enabling, and even profiting from sexual abuse and exploitation. Because of this list that NCOSI has run annually, they've actually been able to create a lot of systemic change and a lot of it's activated a lot of changes and actions from these companies. So it's not just a shaming list, but it's action oriented. And there's many different reasons why these companies are on the list. I encourage you to go to the website to check each company out specifically, but we talked about two companies today on the list, Tick and Discord. So unfortunately, due to the lack of protection that these companies have put in place, scenarios like we saw today are more possible and more frequent than they should. So that's why they are on the list, and you can read more about it. I encourage you. And not only are they on a list, but there's different ways that you can take action either by reaching out to these groups. And there's also a act that I want to talk about in 2 seconds. But one last resource I wanted to share is this app called Bark. And I promise this isn't an ad. This is just helpful information that I wanted to share. But it's a platform that's worth exploring if you're a parent or if you know any parents. It's an affordable, award-winning dashboard, which proactively monitors text messages, YouTube, emails, and different social media networks for potential safety concerns. So it's supposed to be an easy way for parents to monitor for any sensitive content. So it basically has triggers and can detect any kind of bullying language or any language that shouldn't be in there. It's not to micromanage children, but just to make sure that the child's able to use their phone in a positive way. So that's really a decision from the parents. I just encourage you to explore it. It was something that I learned about. I think they recently actually created a Bark phone. I think that came out this week or rather recently. So they're constantly developing new technologies, and they're worth at least, taking a brief glimpse at on the internet. Last thing I want to point to is an act that we've been advocating for with many other like-minded organizations in the United States and Nicosia as well, one of our favorite partners. So child sexual abuse material, unfortunately, has really exploded in the last 2 decades, but protections for children have not in the same rapid pace. Technology companies right now are currently provided, unfortunately, with legal immunity thanks to a loophole in the current Communications Decency Act for knowingly facilitating the distribution of child sexual abuse material. So what that means is that if a website, let's say YouTube or Facebook, knowingly is facilitating child sexual abuse material, victims can't actually sue or hold these companies accountable because of a loophole. And we want to get that changed as soon as possible. We believe accountability is a key way to prevent and stop trafficking. Without accountability, we cannot make a dent in this issue. There's nothing to deter criminals from doing what they're doing. So we are advocating for this Earn It Act that would amend that loophole. So you can check that out on our campaign page. You can go to lifewaynetwork.org, and our campaign page for World Day Against Trafficking is there, and there's more information on that page on how you can take action. Okay, so without further ado, what a journey today was. We appreciate every single one of you, every single one of your responses, whether we saw it on the chat or not. Please do, again, check out the campaign page with different ways of taking action. We'll also put our social press kit on there so you can share social media with your networks and read our blogs. We put so many ways that you can take action. We also encourage you to donate. We run a lot of important programming in the safe housing, in the safe houses and different supports. So for instance, as I mentioned before, the computer literacy, a lot of the residents haven't had interactions with computers before coming to the safe house. It's a safe environment for us to help them with any telehealth appointments that they have, their English lessons, going on an interview. And all of that is possible because of the support that you provide to us. So every single dollar counts, and we absolutely appreciate it. And I did mention blog posts. We put out 2 blog posts for this month on this theme. One is general about the intersection of technology and human trafficking. Carolina wrote that one, and I wrote one more specific about Lifeway's approaches in this digital space. So it's 2 complementary blog posts. We recommend that you read them and share them to get the word out. So on behalf of everyone from Lifeway Network, we greatly appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day.